Hi, good evening. My name is Christina Tobin. I'm the president of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. First of all, I want to thank you very much to Chicago State University for supporting this Illinois gubernatorial debate. I would also like to thank the following co-sponsors: Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity at Chicago State University. Thank you. The African American Male Resource Center. And the Latino Resource Center. And of course, we would not be here today without these awesome candidates. We have Mr. Rich Whitney with the Green Party, Mr. Lex Green with the Libertarian Party, Michael White with the Constitution Party, Mr. William Doc Walls as an independent, and Mr. Scott Lee Cohen as an independent. Thank you all, 5 candidates, for being true believers in free and equal elections. So I want to go into the format of this debate this evening. It will be a cumulative time debate format. Each candidate will have an opportunity to make an opening statement of 2 minutes each. The order for these statements were determined at random. There will be 5 questions, 4 determined beforehand by each sponsor, and 1 from a suggestion made by an audience member prior to the debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Each candidate will also have 3 opportunities total to take 1 more minute after each candidate has answered a question to offer a rebuttal or expand upon their previous answer. After the question period, each candidate will have an opportunity to make a 2-minute closing statement. So let the debate begin, and I'd like to start with an opening statement from Mr. Rich Whitney. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a timekeeper with a warning thing or something? Okay. Ah, there we go. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On November 2nd, Illinois voters have a crucial choice to make. That choice is not simply one of deciding who is the best candidate for governor. The choice is whether we are going to continue to allow our state to slide into the abyss by electing either the same blue corporate-sponsored team responsible for the problem, the red corporate-sponsored team, which offers only a different variety of pain, or will we finally put in the Green Party team, the team that comes from us, we the people, the team that actually provides substantive answers to the critical problems facing our state? I trust that I need not recite the list of problems for you, as that would take all night. Suffice it to say that we have the biggest unfunded pension liability in the United States, the most underfunded and unequally funded schools in the United States, the core functions of our government have been devastated, and we are still bleeding red ink faster than oil is gushing out of that hole in the Gulf of Mexico. Indeed, much like BP and its contractors, the blue team and the red team prefer to point fingers at one another rather than take responsibility for the systemic causes of the crisis. But their conduct is even more inexcusable than BP's, because this disaster was entirely preventable and the solutions have been well known, at least to those paying attention, for years. On the spending side, we need to stop using government as a cash cow for political favoritism, and on the revenue side, we need to fix our broken regressive tax system, beginning with the measures advocated by the Responsible Budget Coalition. This election, put yourselves in the driver's seat and vote the Green team into office. Thank you.
Lex Green, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lex Green, and I need to point that out, that my name is Green, not my party. I think Rich and I will both appreciate. He's the Green Party. I'm Lex Green. I'm with the Libertarian Party. I'm running because I believe we need to change quickly the way we view government and the way government views us. We have an urgency right now that is becoming more and more apparent with every year and every new administration. The inability to solve the problems used to be hidden by a lot of measures that appeared to make sense and were justified by certain political rhetoric. But right now, our leaders are clueless as to what to do. And I believe that that is heading us down the wrong direction. We're seeing more government control of our finances, more government control of our lives. True to my party's principles, but also to my own principles, we need to limit the size of government. We need to be responsible for ourselves and our communities, and let the government needs to let us live our lives without their interference. And we also need to keep more of our hard-earned money, the fruits of our labor, and that means lowering taxes. In order to do that, we need to get a handle on spending. We all understand this, it's in the news every day, but apparently our leaders don't seem to understand how to do that. I can do that, and I will do that. I'll make the hard decisions. I'm not going to worry about re-election. I'm going to worry about doing what is best for the citizens of Illinois, controlling spending and reducing taxes. Thank you for coming.
Mr. Michael White.
Hello, Illinois. I am Michael White, candidate for governor with the Constitution Party. I'm not a great speaker, I'll tell you that right up front, so I won't disappoint you. But I'd like to start with a little different than anyone else here, is that I want to talk about the top 5 signs your government has a problem spending money. Number 5 being that we borrow money so government can continue to spend. Number 4, spending to win back votes lost. Number 3 would be restless and irritable, not having the ability to spend more money. Number 2, bragging about spending by exaggerating jobs created and jobs saved. And the number 1 reason that your government has a spending problem is it's preoccupied with spending and unable to stop. Now, the really funny part is that I found this on the state lottery site, because March was Problem Gambling Month. And I changed these tips just slightly, and I changed the word gambling with the word spending. So it tells me that Illinois is gambling away our wealth, our state, and our future. And if we don't start listening, where I think Lex is wrong here is he's saying they don't know what they're doing. I think they know exactly what they're doing in the state of Illinois. I think they're consolidating and building power and taking wealth from us. You're going to hear a lot today about creating jobs and who creates jobs. It isn't government. It isn't business. It's we the people that create jobs by our own individual wealth and going out shopping and buying and spending and building and creating. It isn't government. It isn't business. It is just a regular, everyday citizen like us having wealth and being able to build a home and get an education. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. William Doc Walls.
Hi, I'm William Doc Walls. I'm an independent for governor of the state of Illinois. My running mate is Ed Scanlon. And Ed Scanlon and I have taken on this mission because we want to help people unthink their economics and develop a smart economy that guarantees every Illinois resident a better quality of life. And a smart economy includes the creation of sustainable private sector jobs. We want to make certain that every Illinois resident who wants a job has a job. It also includes the proliferation of cleaner, greener, more energy efficient and technologically advanced manufacturing plants. A series of public-private partnerships funded by $2 billion in capital budget grants to help Illinois businesses grow, effectively compete in the national and global marketplace, increase production, and create 100,000 sustainable private sector jobs. It also includes less spending on incarceration and more spending on education, rehabilitation, and skill development. Illinois has done a dismal job of managing the taxpayers' dollars, and we provide solutions for that. We seek to normalize Illinois and adopt some of the best practices that have made corporate 500 companies effective and efficient. That includes eliminating the pension system as we know it and instead establishing a 401k retirement plan. It makes more sense to go with defined contributions rather than defined benefits at this point in time. We also have to make certain that everybody in Illinois is able to enjoy a quality of life, a high quality of life. So we have to cut taxes. That means that we have to grow our economy. That means that we have to enable people to get out here in the global economy and bring money, jobs, and opportunity back to Illinois. Illinois has a backwards philosophy. We're the 6th most regressive taxing state in the nation. We're 49th when it comes to funding education. We're 44th when it comes to gross domestic product growth. Illinois has issues, and we have answers.
Mr. Scott Lee Cohen.
Good evening. I'd like to start by thanking Christine for forming the organization Free and Access. I believe that the choice, your choice to vote, is very important this November. Let me tell you, I am not a career politician. I am a small business owner. I had the honor of winning the Democratic nomination for the office of Lieutenant Governor in this past primary. After I had won, I was forced off the ticket by the Democratic Party because I'm not a political insider, because I wouldn't go into their back rooms and cut deals that would have hurt the people of Illinois. I spent my own money in the last campaign because I wanted to lead the people in an honest and fair way. I didn't want to be beholden to anybody for any reason, and that's what I did. The Democratic Party couldn't stand that. Right now, Illinois has an 11.6% unemployment rate and a $14 billion deficit. Yet Governor Quinn is handing out raises to his employees and his staff like handing children to a candy to a child. It's imperative that we get our spending under control. We get rid of the waste and mismanagement. We run the state of Illinois like a business. That's the only way we're going to be able to lead the people of the state back to the road of hope and prosperity. Thank you.
And I'd like to start with our first question, which you have 2 minutes to respond. And the question is for Mr. Rich Whitney, from left to right. In a July 2nd New York Times article, Illinois' financial situation was described as ugly. The state of Illinois has $5 billion worth of unpaid bills and another unbalanced budget for 2010. As governor, will you cut government spending as a solution to this ugly situation? And if so, what areas of government would you see spending cuts? Rich Whitney.
Thank you. Yes, I do believe that we need to be cutting some spending, but we have to use a scalpel, not a meat cleaver, and we have to be careful. You know, it's real easy for politicians to say, oh, I'm going to cut the waste, and I'm going to balance the budget by cutting spending because we need to live within our means. But if we literally tried to close a $13.75 billion budget hole by just cutting spending, it would cause our economy to really slide over the cliff. It would cost about 128,000 jobs. The truth of the matter is we need to restore health to our public sector. And in this race, unless I hear something surprising this evening, I'm the only candidate that actually has a comprehensive plan for dealing with the budget crisis. Yes, we have to look at spending. Yes, I support a forensic audit to ferret out those articles of spending that are actually geared more toward rewarding political friends and actually serving a legitimate public purpose. However, we are kidding ourselves if we don't look at the revenue side to restore health to our universities, our schools, and our necessary public services. You know, as a result of the $1.4 billion that Governor Quinn cut last week, there's probably going to be, they estimate, probably about 70,000 mental health recipients in the state of Illinois that are going to be kicked out of community-based residences and community-based services, and most of them are probably going to end up in jail or in homeless shelters. This is unacceptable. I have a plan that involves reversing our regressive tax system, supporting House Bill 174 and Senate Bill 750 to make our system more progressive. I'm the only candidate that is talking about creating a state bank so that when we collect our tax revenues, we are making money from it and not Wall Street bankers. And I'm the only candidate that is talking about putting a financial tax on speculation to raise additional funds from the people that caused our real estate crisis and caused our economy to crash in the first place.
Thank you. Lex Green?
Yes, the main portion of my platform is to cut spending, because in the end, this is a very simple problem. A problem of increasing spending year over year and decade after decade, administration after administration, and that includes both of the major parties. I know that there's a lot more that the governor needs to do, but this is the first and foremost and first constitutional duty of the governor, is to present a balanced budget, and we're not seeing that. As far as presenting a plan, I've put forth a budget that is a agency by agency budget. It's available for viewing on my website if you're into going line by line, number by number. It includes line by line reductions in the Department of Health, the Department of Healthcare and Family Services, and the Department of Education. Now, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, those are the places where we really need to preserve the spending. But if you look at what's happened from 2010 to 2011, Governor Quinn proposed $1.5 billion of increases in the Department of Healthcare and Family Services and in the State Board of Education. So by reducing both of those back to previous year levels, we've just saved $3 billion over his budget. So we really aren't doing anything draconian. I actually am targeting going back to the year 2008 because we've had steady increases in spending all of those years. So these things are doable. Again, they're not draconian, but they are necessary to bring things in line. We have to balance the budget for the sake of our businesses, our citizens, the taxpayers, and for the future of our Illinois state government.
Thank you. Michael White?
Absolutely, we have to control spending and cut spending. I've got some articles here, just so happens. Here's one. We're talking about financially strapped states still hiring workers because they hired they had 1,737 workers, and now we're up to 1,900. We're continually hiring people, and we don't even have the money to run the state. Here we are borrowing money to run our pension system. I mean, I could go on and on. So if we don't get control of how we're spending money, there's no way we're going to balance our budget. I think Lex talked very well on how the governor's continually growing government and asking for money, but they don't ask for money anymore. We just borrow money to take from our future and our children's future. We've got, like I think everyone said here, around $15 billion debt, and then we have another $5 billion, I think it's up to $6 billion today, I heard, in unpaid bills. This doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help education. It doesn't help those with mental health. It doesn't help small businesses. Small businesses that are struggling are now put on hold to collect their money from the state. The prison system is now going outside the state to buy things it needs, and it's costing more money. If we don't get rid of this debt quickly, in these unpaid bills, we are going to continue to take more away from education and healthcare. What my team proposes is a temporary sales tax that will affect every Illinoisan, yes, but we will quickly pay down that debt. And why I say it's temporary is because someone has to be held accountable. I, as governor, would be accountable. If we can balance our budget first, then we can do a temporary sales tax to get rid of that debt and get rid of those unpaid bills so we can start fresh. But with the dollar going down, interest rates going up, fees and fines going against the state because we cannot pay our bills, we will be hurting the poor, we will be hurting the middle class, we will be hurting education, and those definitely with special needs, because that money will be drawn from those sectors and put just to maintain those loans and that debt.
Thank you. William Doc Walls.
When Pat Quinn took over as governor, we had a $9 billion debt. That's burgeoned up to $13 billion under his watch. And if you ask him, he'll tell you it's because of a structural deficit. The truth is, a structural deficit is an ongoing shortfall between the revenue generated by a taxing body and the inflationary cost of continuing that same level of public service from one year to the next without expanding or adding new programs or services. By its own definition, that is not the situation here in Illinois. How many of you remember recently when Pat Quinn announced that he was going to have a canoe czar, a new addition to the payroll? How many of you saw on the news where he gave raises to his favorite people, the people that work with him? Some people got raises as high as 20%, his budget director. On average, 11.4% raises in these tough economic times. While state employees have been asked to have furlough days. That's a backhanded pay cut. Why? Because they're bringing in less money in their households. But at the same time, Pat Quinn and his administration has not said to those companies, those big corporate entities who do millions of dollars of business with the state, reduce your profit margin. Some of them receive profit margins of as much as 30%. So for example, companies like Kinney and Walsh Construction Company and McHugh, as they work on the expressways during this construction season, they'll earn $100 million. 30 million of that will be profit. That's way too much. No one should get rich at the taxpayer's expense during these tough economic times. So Illinois has a spending problem, and Pat Quinn is the problem. He doesn't know how to say no. He doesn't know how to tighten up those purse strings and say everybody will have to bear the burden. Instead, he wants you, he wants the state employees to carry that weight. We have to say no to Pat Quinn.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Lee Cohen.
Well, I agree that Pat Quinn is part of the problem. We can cut and cut and cut and continue or decide to raise taxes and continue to raise taxes. The problem is this wasteful spending will never stop until we get rid of the patronage jobs, the inefficient employees, and the employees that don't have the experience to run their departments. My plan as governor is twofold, is to clean house, to get rid of these patronage jobs, to get rid of these appointed jobs. At the same time, using a laser-like focus on wasteful spending, pork spending, and redundant spending. But again, until you do both combined, you'll never get rid of the problem. I don't think I'm going to elaborate on that anymore at this point.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the second
Let
question.
me use a rebuttal.
Oh, sorry, rebuttal.
I'd like to use
Excuse
one of
me.
my rebuttals. No problem, I'll take a minute.
Always forget
The
something.
truth is, you have to operate within the realm of reality. Here in Illinois, those patronage workers belong to people who are influential. Some of them belong to Mike Madigan. Some of them belong to the state representatives and the state senators. Some of them belong to Mayor Daley. If you go in and you pick a fight with them by eliminating all of their people, and first of all, you can't do it because the Shackman decree says that you can't. But if you go in and you try to eliminate all of those people, you're going to take on a fight that you can't handle. You have to go in with the spirit of cooperation and understanding when you start dealing with the state legislature and the persons who are in power here in Illinois. That's realistic. To govern here in the state of Illinois, you need to go in and get votes in all of their communities so that you have political capital and political will, so that you can bend and twist them to do the things that the people of the state of Illinois need you to do to make a difference in their lives. So as we move forward as governor of the state of Illinois, the most important thing that I would do is help to unify the state by promoting culture and diversity sensitivity and get votes across the entire state.
Thank you. Any other rebuttals? Mr. Rich Whitney.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to respond first of all to Mr. Green I don't think that we can possibly agree that it's not draconian to enact further cuts in spending in education and health care. We're not paying our health care bills now. They're running 6, 8 months behind. Public health care providers are faced with closure throughout the state. Education has just taken another real hit, another $100 million for higher education, and just what happened last week. We cannot possibly continue this way. This is devastating education. Teachers getting pink slips, class sizes growing higher. This is not sustainable. It's not responsible. It is draconian. As for a temporary sales tax, this is only going to fuel the problem more. We already have one of the most regressive tax systems in the United States. That's not going to solve the problem. Tax sales are notoriously regressive. What do we mean by regressive? When we put all taxes in Illinois together, we are taxing the bottom 20% of income earners at more than triple the rate of the top 1%. Then we act puzzled why we're going broke. We need to turn that around. We have answers for how to do that. You look at House Bill 174, Senate Bill 750.
Thank you. Any additional rebuttals? Okay, moving on to question number 2. Starting with Mr. Lex Green. 45 independent and alternative party candidates just filed to run for office in Illinois. 42 of them are facing petition challenges. Many of them will be removed from the ballot, even though it means incumbents will be running unopposed. What proposals do you have to improve our democracy in Illinois? Mr. Lex Green.
Well, of course, almost all of us here have been affected by these challenges, and we need to implement new election law that is simply equal across the board. Now, I have a interesting perspective on this that some people have ignored, and I look at the fact that our primary system is paid for by the taxpayers essentially to subsidize the Republican and Democratic parties, and with this last election, the Green Party through their inclusion. And yet at the same time, I was nominated at a convention that we paid for, the Libertarian Party paid for themselves. So we're looking at a model that that puts all election law and the also laws affecting how Republicans and Democrats conduct their affairs into state law. That is hardly a general purpose that is beneficial to the people of Illinois. I do not have a specific proposal there, but I would love to see all the parties have their own conventions where they pay for their own selection process and then put them forward to the general election. Assuming that that is politically undoable, which is possible at least in the short term, we need to simply go to a fee-based entry into the ballot. For example, and I don't have a specific number I like, $5,000 to get on the ballot, which is much cheaper than most parties and independents have to pay through their process of balloting. So that would make it even across the board, and I would also support a fee or signature option. For example, $5,000 or 5,000 signatures, as long as it's equal for all candidates.
Thank you. Michael White.
Well, I think we need to start with the Board of Elections and the statutes. I mean, it is true that the standards for the established parties and the standards for anyone trying to get new onto the scene are completely different. 25,000 in 90 days, the Republican and Democrats, 5,000 signatures in 90 days. You obviously know that new people coming into the system are going to have a very difficult time getting 25,000 signatures due to the fact that they're not in politics. And that's what Illinois needs, is people who are not in politics. Along with that, I think that if you look at the primary, and as a voter, I am upset. As a voter, if you look at the primary, you take the total amount of people who are eligible to vote. The people who picked Quinn and Brady really only comes to about 8%. So 8% of the voters are telling us who we're going to vote for. like Lex says, they might as well just pick the people and save the state money. If we do go on a fee-based system, another bonus, the state is in financial problems, we have money coming into the state there. But if we don't change the Board of Elections to actually do the job and stop asking parties and people to go check through these petitions and determine what's good, it's a very ridiculous system. If I would have turned in one signature and no one would have questioned my petition, I wouldn't be having any problems at all. I would be on the ballot, because even though the statute says you have to do these things, the only person checking it are those in the parties or an individual citizen who determines to buy that petition and question it. We have to have the Board of Election actually do work, count signatures, if that's what they want to do, and do the work, and not put it back on the people of Illinois and the parties to go verify this information.
Thank you. William Doc Walls.
The laws of our Board of Election oftentimes serve as incumbency protection principles. They protect the people who are already in power. They make it almost impossible for you to get on the ballot as an independent. In fact, there's never been an independent candidate on the ballot here in Illinois for governor as a pure independent. There have been alternative party candidates, but never a true independent. And that saps the possibility that everybody hopes for when they wake up in the morning. You want somebody fresh, you want somebody new, you want somebody who's out here fighting for you and fighting for the issues that are important to you and the communities that you serve and the interests that you represent. That doesn't happen in Illinois. In other places like California, for example, they require that you pay 2% of what the salary is of the position that you're seeking. So for example, for governor, you come in and you pay $3,492, and that puts you on the ballot. And then they also will allow you to do a combination of fee and some signatures. So it serves the purpose. They will tell you that the purpose is to keep frivolous candidates off of the ballot. And we understand that that's necessary, because otherwise you have a ballot that's as long as a baby's dream. But in fact, there are better ways to do it than they do here in Illinois, because if you're challenged, you go into an environment that is tilted against you, where you, the challenger, are now burdened with the proof of proving that all of these signatures that you submitted are legitimate and real. And that's done at a great expense to the taxpayers. This process costs millions and millions and millions of dollars of taxpayers' money at a time when we can't afford to spend it. So it's time to seriously educate the public and get people to understand that this principle isn't working for you, it's working against you, and it only benefits those people who've been in power for way too long.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Lee Cohen.
You know, I know the disparity better than anybody between the Democrat and Republican signature requirements. They're required to have 5,000. As an independent, I was required to have 25,000. I was blessed to be able to turn in 133,000. But the point is, as governor, I would fight for legislation for the following. Number one is to have an open primary. You know, right now you go and you have to declare Democrat or Republican. Let's do away with that. Let people have their privacy. You know, go in and vote for whoever you want. Second, I would lower the threshold of independent and third-party candidates so that it's equal to the Democrats and the Republicans. Or as it was said earlier, come up with a fee-based system based on what the salary of the position you're running for. In other words, if I'm running for governor and I'm going to get paid $150,000 a year, then I would have to pay 10% or 15% of that as a fee to be put on the ballot. It could be either or, but that is a phenomenal system. And again, as governor, I will fight for equality. I've always been a believer that people deserve choice. You shouldn't be forced into a two-party system voting for Democrat or Republican. And I will make it my mission to make this as open, equal, and fair as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Rich Whitney.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think it's no secret how you address the problem. Illinois has one of the most repressive and restrictive ballot access laws in the United States, as everyone here at this table knows from firsthand experience. We heard about the $25,000 signature requirements. It's absurd. We need to reduce the ballot access requirements to something much more reasonable. I would suggest something on the order of maybe 3,000 for a statewide race, 500 for a state rep or state senate race, and keep it much more reasonable and much more attainable. One thing we don't suffer from in our political system is too many choices. Certainly not here in Illinois. We have too few. As a matter of fact, we have the obscene spectacle of many places where incumbents are running unopposed. It's absolutely ridiculous. How is that in any way a democratic republic? How is that giving voters real choices? We need to reverse that. We also need to reverse the change to the law that occurred just last year that the Democrats and Republicans ganged up and pushed through, which changed the slating requirement. We called it, in the Green Party, we called it the Protect Incumbents Act of 2009, because what it did is instead of, after the primary, if you wanted to slate a candidate, you had your committee get together and they could slate the candidate, and that way you had more competitive elections. Well, they changed that so that in order to slate a candidate, now you not only have to have your committee meet and slate a candidate, you also have to get the same number of signatures that you would have to get to run in the primary anyway, and you have to get it in 45 days instead of 90 days. The Democrats and Republicans ganged up and pushed that through. It was aimed at the Green Party after we had won established party status in 2006, but it hurts all of us. It hurts all of the other parties. It hurts all of you as voters. So that's one thing I would do, is fight to repeal that pernicious law, as well as lower the ballot access requirements.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? All right, moving on to question number 3, starting with Michael White. A lot of minority students and single parents attend Chicago State University. They recently had to fight for service in Springfield. How would you assist this constituent base in gaining needed financial assistance to secure a higher educational experience, especially with the budget crisis as outlined by Governor Quinn?
Well, I think that's why it is so vitally important to get rid of our debt and our unpaid bills, because, as I said earlier, that is pulling money from education. But I think I look at education from more of a constitutional aspect, and I believe that we as individuals are responsible for our own destiny. Government is accountable to us, but we are responsible for our destiny. So I believe that the state has a responsibility when it comes to education. But I want the students to realize it is their education. It's not mine. They hold it, and those families hold it. And as a state, we need to find ways to, again, reduce that gap between those who have the means and those do not. I believe in a better student loan system that allows everyone to get a very low-interest student loan, because the goal of education is for you to go out and get a job and make good money. And we need you to go get a good job and make good money and be productive to society, because then you're going to pay that student loan, and that's going to help the next person who has to fight that same battle. But realistically, the state shouldn't be in the business of scholarships. You look at the abuse of the General Assembly scholarship. Here we've got people who give out scholarships every year. They get, I think, 2 a year the General Assembly gets. Again, when you get to scholarships, it gets abusive. Everyone should be eligible and have that ability to get a loan, for a student loan to go to school, because they will get a job and they will get a good paying job, and it's their education. They are going to earn it. They're going to be responsible, and they're going to be proud that they accomplished that goal.
Thank you. William Doc Walls?
About a year ago, Pat Quinn cut MAP grant funding, and when pressured, he found a way to put it back. But they put it back conditioned upon funding through gaming, through gambling. You do not fund education, which is such a principal right in our country, based on gambling. You have to have a better way to fund MAP grants and provide scholarships, those things that Michael hates, provide scholarships to people who need them most, because that provides people opportunity. And without opportunity, people fail. So we have to make certain that we're properly funding education and that it's not based upon a whim and that it's not relegated to a second-class status. You have to fund it through real hardcore structural programs that are definable so that you know how much money you're going to have from one season to the next season. That's critical and that's important, and we'll do that. You also have to make certain that students here at Chicago State University right now, a phenomenal group of students, have jobs when they get out of school. Without jobs, education was a waste of time. So we have to make certain that we're creating those jobs in the industries that they desire to go into, and that we're catapulting them out into the global economy and into the national economy and giving them an opportunity to follow their hearts, their minds, their dreams, and their talents. That's why they get up every morning and go to school. That's why they study late at night, so that they have the opportunity to achieve their dreams and achieve their goals. And even though the state itself can't create jobs, the state can create an environment that's conducive to job growth. And that's what we owe the students right here at Chicago State University.
Thank you. Scott Lee Cohen.
There are students in the room, so this might apply to them. Every year, legislators are given grants, scholarships to give away. 1,600 scholarships were given away last year at a total cost of $13.5 million. Is there one student in this room that received one of those scholarships? I didn't think so. It goes back to what I said in my opening statement. By cutting the wasteful spending, by hiring and putting in competent employees, we will be able to take the money that was wastefully spent and put it back into education. I also believe, as governor, I want to fight to have the lottery fund. Now, that fund was originally designed for education, but it was so lucrative they took it out and they put it into the general fund. It's funding general expenses. I will fight to take it out of the general fund and put it back into education. This will alleviate a lot of the pressure and give the people, the students, the possibility of money to continue their education. I'm a firm believer in a good education. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich Whitney.
The answer to your question is not to alleviate the pressure. It's not to find more ways for students to borrow money to go to school. It's to eliminate the need for borrowing. Financing higher education is a fundamental obligation of government. It's stated in the preamble to our Constitution, in the Illinois Constitution, and rightly so. Investing in people, investing in education is the smartest thing government can do. It's the smartest thing it can invest its money on. For every dollar we spent on the original GI Bill after World War II, we got about $7 back in that much healthier an economy. It is penny wise and pound foolish to starve education. So I don't want to find ways for students to borrow money. I think it is absurd to obtain a higher education in the richest nation in the world, in one of the richest states in the richest nation in the world, to have to incur a lifetime of debt. It is absolutely absurd. For about $3.75 billion more than we are spending now, we could provide higher education, 2-year and 4-year, tuition-free to every qualified in-state Illinois resident. That's what I want to do if I'm elected governor. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, how can you do that when you've already got a $13 billion plus budget hole to get out of? Well, I'll tell you how you do it. First of all, you pass Senate Bill 750 like I've been advocating. That gets you about $7.75 billion right there. You put a tax on the financial speculators who are destroying our economy, a minuscule tax. Fraction of 1% could raise about $4.5 billion to get us out of the budget hole. You enact a fee and dividend system to fight the producers of greenhouse gases. We can raise about a net of $2 billion doing that. You enact a state bank. There's other measures in my plan, which you can see at whitneyforgov.org. By year 2 or 3 of a Whitney administration, we can not only climb out of the budget hole, we can do the right thing as a government toward restoring economic health by investing in students, by creating free higher education in the state of Illinois.
Thank you. Lex Green.
If you're receiving money from the state, you're probably not going to like my answer. Because I hear it not just in regards to this issue, but I hear it all across the state. We agree that you need to cut spending. We agree that you need to balance the budget, but what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do to make sure that I continue to get my subsidy while you take care of everybody else? This is a tough problem at a time when the state is broke. But I want to put the funding of schools in perspective. Since 2003, tuition has gone up almost 10%. I don't have the last year's data rolled into this, so pardon me if these aren't totally accurate. Professors' pay, on average, has gone up about 20%. Administrative pay has gone up over 100%, and non-administrative workers at universities throughout Illinois, their pay has gone up 280%. So every program you receive is not helping students, but it's subsidizing employment of government workers. We need transparency at every university to see how these things are being spent, because right now most universities are hiding their expenses in a shroud of secrecy. We need to see what's going on, shine a light on it so that we can get a handle on it. So I am sorry to say the state is broke, and we need to start relying more on our communities, on our churches, on private charities to step up and help those in need, because as we've seen already, the state can't do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So are we doing rebuttals? Right. So you would like a rebuttal, Michael?
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
Someone said education is a right. I suppose it is a right to a point, but it is an individual responsibility. The state takes care of you from K through 12. At 12, it's now become your responsibility to get the education, to pay for your education. It's not only in student loans, because that is where Mr. Whitley is correct. We don't want to have your wealth grow in student loans, but we have to open up student jobs for everyone. I don't like the idea of a mentality that puts us against them. Either we're all equal or we're not. I don't care if you're rich or poor. You all have the same opportunity, and we should remain with that same opportunity. I don't like this idea of a country that continually divides us, the politicians that divide us. We are a state, and we must work together as a state, and that means equal opportunity across the board. You should be able to get a cheap student loan. You should be able to get student work. It doesn't matter what your parents do. It's what you do. You are the person that is becoming an adult in charge of your own life, not government, not us up here. It is you and you alone.
Thank you. Any more rebuttals? All right, moving on to the next question. Mr. Doc Walls. What policies proposed, as outlined by your proponents, do you feel are bad for Illinois? How would you counter them? Specifics, please. Mr. Doc Walls.
Scott Lee Cohen talked about going in and eliminating people, not at this point in time in history. I think that there are 4,000 jobs that a governor controls that are Shackman exempt, and you should make certain that there are policy directors in those positions who share your philosophy and your policy and can go and make a difference in people's lives based upon the policies and the platforms that you promoted during your campaign. Michael White talked about less government intervention and less scholarships, and the fact that we provide an education for K through 12. Well, no 18-year-old, very few 18-year-olds could actually finance their own education without making a mess of it, and that would be a mess that we would have to clean up. So we have to help them provide for their college education. It helps the state, because one of the things that businesses look at is a well-educated workforce. They look for that, and they locate in places where you have a well-educated workforce. Lex says that we need less government. That's not always the case. I mean, government is not some mystical giant. It's a hierarchy of respected relationships. And the purpose of government is to provide for the common defense, ensure civility, and to take care of those who are weak, afflicted, infirmed, or disoriented. They use our tax dollars to implement those programs. So at some point in time, we have to recognize that we need critical care right now. There are people who can't take care of themselves, and government does have to step in and do that. I'm opposed to government gambling. I'm opposed to government gambling. I don't believe that that helps an economy, and I don't believe that you can build an economy that's dependent upon government gambling and using that as a means to fund education. Rich hasn't really said anything yet that I totally disagree with. I'm sure there'll be a question at some point in time, and I'll use one of my rebuttals to address that.
Thank you.
Look out, Rich.
Scott Lee Cohen.
At this time, I want to say this. Individually, we all have some good ideas and some bad ideas. I came here to talk about my ideas, not to criticize my opponent for what they think is right or wrong. So at this stage, I'm going to pass on the question. I am.
Mr. Rich Whitney.
Yes, I want to ask a clarification. When you say the question is asking what criticisms we have of our opponents' ideas, can I assume that we can include the two opponents who aren't here this evening?
Yes, you may. You may also
Okay.
include Quinn and Brady. Please.
I'd kind of like to focus on them, the elephants and not in the room, I guess you might say, because those are the ideas that I think we really need to be talking about, and they're bad ideas. And these are the people that, you know, they had every right to be here, and they should be here, but they're not. Bad idea from our incumbent governor. I think bringing to the General Assembly a proposed budget that had $5.7 billion in spending for which there was no identifiable revenue stream was a pretty bad idea. I think you could call that irresponsible. And of course now the General Assembly was equally irresponsible in punting back to him because they did not have the political courage to do what is right. But it's put him now in an untenable situation. So now, even after the devastating cuts that he enacted last week, we still have now, unless they pass this borrowing plan, which is another bad idea, a $12.3 billion budget deficit even after the devastating cuts. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but I regard that as frankly insane. That is just absolutely crazy. That's $12.3 billion more of bills unpaid in the next fiscal year on top of the record and it's actually going to end up being about $6 billion that we didn't pay last year. This is crazy when we know we have solutions to the budget problem that the people of this state have been fighting for years. The over 200 organizations that belong to the Responsible Budget Coalition. This is not new. This is not rocket science. We have to fix our broken tax system. We have to tax the people more able to pay instead of taxing people least able to pay. That's what we need to solve it. As far as Senator Brady, his idea of across-the-board spending cuts would be equally, if not more, devastating. That's also a bad idea. Of course, he's backed away from it, but he was seen on video talking about it. It's still a bad idea. Now he's talking in vague generalities instead. I guess you could call that no idea, not a bad idea.
Thank you. Lex Green.
I would like to take this time to basically clarify the difference in philosophies that we see between those of us up here and also the two big government Republican and Democratic candidates that are not here. What we need to do, in my mind, is reevaluate what the role of government in our lives is and what the effect has been. Yes, according to the Constitution, the government is to provide for the general welfare and common defense. However, that doesn't mean to give welfare. That means to provide an environment where we can flourish. Every time in practice, our Congress in Washington or our state General Assembly oversteps that limited mandate, they mess things up. They end up with a big bureaucracy so that if $10,000 goes to somebody who's needy, it takes a $100,000 administrator and a huge bureaucracy to administrate that. We need to remember that we didn't have these programs in the past. We relied on ourselves and each other, our communities, our churches, and our family and friends. We need to go back to that model because all we're doing is funneling money towards agencies in Springfield and towards their cronies and the contractors that are able to contribute greatly to the re-election campaigns, which is where a lot of the problems start. So my friends here, the Green Party, independents, and the two candidates that are not here, they think that government should step in, tell you how to live your life and control the money. At the same time, we are hurting because we're paying too much taxes, and what do we get? A state in debt.
Thank you. Michael White.
I would say it's not really a policy difference, and I think Lex touched on this, it's a philosophy difference. We are either this country of entitlements or we're in a country of empowerment. If we become a country of entitlements, which we've been, I would say, for the least decade, you can see where this country has gotten. We're in the hole. Some say we're the richest country in the world. I say we're not. I say we're very much in debt, from the federal side to the state side, into families losing their actual wealth. And until we become individual responsible, and people think being a conservative or someone who talks about individual responsibility means that you're not going to take care of people. It does not at all. It means we're going to look at other ideas to do it. We need in the state to actually look into every single agency to make it better, fast, and cheaper. We have to be asking the question, why are we doing this? Who are we doing it for? And then again, we have to ask, how can we make it better? But in the state of Illinois, making it better means borrowing more money or coming up with a different tax scheme or getting your buddy another job in government. The fact is, we have to get people in office who believe in empowering each other. And empowering does not mean giving entitlements. It means giving you the ability to become everything that you can be.
Rebuttal.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Doc Walls, please.
Yep. There's a lot of talk about taxes or no taxes. The truth is, there is a need for increased revenue here in the state of Illinois. Right now, we receive revenue through 7 sources: income tax, sales tax, federal aid, gambling, motor fuel taxes, public utility taxes, and fine fees and assessments. I've suggested an 8th form of revenue, and that is naming rights. I believe that we ought to utilize the propensity of corporations to brand buildings and expressways and benefit from that right here in Illinois. I'd love to see the Microsoft Thompson Center, with Microsoft not owning that building, but paying to have its name on it, just as U.S. Cellular does U.S. Cellular Field, the park that used to be Kaminsky Park. Toyota just put a big old sign up at Cubs Park, and the Cubs organization boasted about the fact that this is going to help to pay for that park on an ongoing basis. We can do the exact same thing right here in Illinois. And any tax increase that Pat Quinn passes, we have to quickly repeal that tax increase as soon as we get even, so that that doesn't continue to grow government more than we need to.
Thank you. Rebuttal? Mr. Rich
Yeah,
Whitney?
I'm going to rebuttal because we're talking about taxes here. The state of Illinois
Sorry.
is 46th in the nation for job growth and economic outlook. The state of Texas is number 3. Why is Texas 3 and Illinois 46? 2 words: taxes and I knew that was coming. Taxes and regulation. If we raise taxes, if we implement another tax, we are going to drive more businesses out of Illinois and keep businesses that are thinking about coming to Illinois away. This is not the answer. This is going to further devastate our economy.
Thank you. Any additionals? Rich Whitney?
Yeah, I want to respond to that. You know, we hear a lot about this, and it's real easy to say, oh yeah, we need to lower taxes because that way we're going to be inviting businesses in instead of driving them out. Fact is, our 3% flat income tax is the lowest rate among the 39 states that have an income tax, okay? And a lot of our neighboring states have higher income taxes. No, that's not, you know, the way you attract business and the way you grow your own business in your state is not by starving your public sector. It's not by devastating your schools and your infrastructure and your social services. It's recognizing the truth of our history, that if we want our private sector to flourish, we need a healthy public sector in education, in healthcare, in social services, in the things that provide a base for which business can then flourish. We've been starving our state for the last couple of decades, and now we're paying the price for it. That's why we're not attracting jobs. That's why we're losing jobs. Do you think we're going to be attracting teachers wanting to come to our state after what we just did to our pension system? I don't think so.
Thank you. Rebuttal? Lex Green?
Yes, I think it's very well known, and plenty of studies have shown this, and the truth is borne out in the way businesses are leaving Illinois, that higher taxes does result in job loss. And Mitch Daniels lowered taxes in Indiana, and he actually gets on TV and encourages businesses, come across the state line, you can save money over here. Illinois is losing not only businesses, but they're losing individuals. 300,000 people are exiting out of Illinois. We are actually likely to lose a representative in Congress because of the loss of population because of our taxes. It's pretty clear to me we need free markets, markets free of government encumbrance, that will actually raise revenues. It's, if you know the Laffer curve, once you get to a certain point of taxing, you actually have reduced revenues. Then the higher taxes go, the lower the revenues you get. So we need to get on the other side of that curve, lower the taxes, and we will actually get more income.
Thank you. Any more rebuttals? Just a reminder, Mr. Rich Whitney, you have 1 rebuttal left. Lex Green, you have 2 rebuttals left. Michael White, 2 rebuttals. Doc Walls, 1 rebuttal. And Scott Cohen, 2 rebuttals. We're on our last question. All right, we're moving on to our final question for the debate. Mr. Scott Cohen. Illinois is often ranked as having the worst funded pension system in the United States. The General Assembly has failed to adequately fund our pension system. They have built up $80 billion to our pensions. Would you propose any changes to our pension system for public employees? Details, please. Scott Cohen.
This is a major issue in Illinois. My philosophy and thinking is this: we are not going to balance our budget or fix the problems on the backs of state employees. When I say state employees, I don't mean mid and upper management. We all know how I feel about them. You know, I believe that these incoming employees, the people who are our new hires, need to be either put on a 401k like was suggested earlier. Working for the state is not a windfall. The state needs to be as competitive as the private sector industries. How we get there, I wish I had all the answers. I don't. But I'm smart enough to know that I don't, and this is going to take a tremendous amount of work, and I feel that I am going to have to surround myself with people who are very sharp with the issues that, in order to come up with the answers, we need very sharp people that are right on with these issues. Again, it's a very complicated, difficult procedure, and it needs to be done right.
Rich Whitney.
In recent times, the corporate media in the state, including the Chicago Tribune and Sun-Times, has engaged in an unrelenting propaganda attack in which they have sought to blame our public sector workers for the failings of the public pension system. This is a big lie. For the last 15, 20 years, the General Assembly of our state has deliberately underfunded our pension system, even though our public pensioners rank in the bottom 20% of pensions in the United States. They're already in the lowest fifth, but then they turn around and say the reason the system's going broke is now your fault because your pensions are too high. That is absolutely absurd. It is a big lie. I refuse to go along with it. I am the only candidate in this race that has fought since day one to preserve the integrity of our public pension system. The idea that we're going to go from a defined benefit system to a defined contribution or a 401k system is ludicrous. When we had an effective middle class in this country, defined benefit pensions used to be the norm. But then Wall Street and the big insurance companies got in the game and they said, well, we want to gamble with your pension money. So they shifted, they fought the unions, they shifted, and they created the defined contribution system as the norm and the 401ks so they could gamble with your money. That is wrong. We need to fight to hold the line. The real battle is to restore retirement security for all workers, not attack it for our public sector workers. We do have answers. We need to get back on the ramp. We had a plan to start restoring fiscal health to our pension system, but the General Assembly and both Republican and Democratic governors decided it was much more expedient to have pension holidays and not pay into the system, and that's how we ended up with this $80 billion pension deficit, the largest in the nation. We need to get back on the ramp, but we don't do it by sacrificing the living standards of our state retirees.
Thank you. Lex Green.
The $80 billion is our unfunded pension liabilities. We have more liabilities beyond that. As a matter of fact, we've taken out emergency spending bonds in the past, and we're still paying for those. So there's a lot more debt than just the $80 billion, which is hard for me to imagine. This is a state. This isn't the world. This isn't the country. Everybody knows what a 401k is. The actual plan for state employees would either be a 403 or a Section 457, but I don't care what you call it. A defined contribution plan says that I get back according to what I put in. Right now, we have a situation where people get back as long as they stay alive, and we're talking about people not like you and me. We're talking about people who can retire at the age of 50. I don't know about you, I'm already 56 and I'm not even close to retirement. They retire at the age of 50. According to the National Taxpayers United of Illinois, there's over 3,000 people retired from the state who are earning over $100,000 in pension benefits. I don't know how many of you are earning $100,000, but I'm not even close. It's a time that we look at this. Now, I have met a lot of people around the state, a lot of the teachers, a lot of the regular workers who are carrying the dirt and lifting the load are only getting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 pensions. These are not the people we want to balance the budget on their backs, but we need to look at the people who are getting a free ride at our expense to the tune of $80 billion. So we need to look at reducing pension liabilities. I favor a defined contribution plan for all new employees. We have to get over to that because we can't afford what we've already got. We certainly can't afford to continue into the future.
Thank you. Michael White,
Ditto.
bring your mic in.
If we take a look at I mean, they were talking about changing, I don't know if they did change the teacher's pension plan. They were talking about changing that age. And I know a lot of teachers got very upset the fact that they could no longer teach after that age because of the children or whatever the situation is. But if you look at any business, it doesn't mean they have to teach. But when you lose that experience, and we're not thinking about that, if we lose that experience, a teacher turns 50, 55, and then retires and is gone, we're losing an experience that is critical to young teachers coming in. And maybe that in itself is part of our education problem. We're continually losing experience to an education system, to a pension system. So we do need to change that age, and there are other jobs that would be beneficial to the education system that they could continue on with. Like Lex was talking about, this entire pension package is killing the state. And we need to have where pensioners actually pay their premiums. They're paying their premiums when they're working, but when they retire, they no longer pay premiums. The state can't afford it. We can't afford it as a people. And the other thing, if you take a look at what's happened in the market that Mr. Whitley talked about, how the bankers had taken over and the 401ks had been destroying people's retirement. If we were all on 401k, if elected officials had a 401k, do you think that we would be in this situation? I don't think so. I think they would have been watching what's going on because they'd have to protect their own pension or their own 401k as well. So I do believe we have to start with the elected offices. They need to be on a 401k. They shouldn't be getting a pension. This is not a full-time career and shouldn't be a full-time career, except if the people decide they want you to stay that long. But this is a pension system for elected officials is what you start getting rid of first and then work through the system.
Thank you. Mr. William Doc Walls.
Our pension system is poorly conceived, first of all. It's been subject to raiders, and as a result, we're $80 billion in the red in terms of pension funding. 80 billion, billion with a B. There are 1,000 million in every billion. That's a whole lot of money. And taxpayers end up paying for it. Why? Because we have the responsibility of paying down that pension every year. Last year, Pat Quinn borrowed $4.5 billion to cover our pension obligation, and that cost us $800 million. That's money that could have gone to education, that could have gone to senior care, that could have gone to mental health care. It could have gone to better use than simply going in the pocket of bankers. We're funding bankers one way or another, and that's why we have to get rid of the defined benefit plan that we currently have. I told you I'd find something I disagree with Rich Whitney on. We have to get rid of that defined benefit plan and have a defined contribution plan. And the important thing is that the person who makes the contribution should retain control and determine how that money is invested. We don't want Wall Street bankers investing their money or misinvesting their monies. We want to make certain that the control remains with those employees who make the contribution. And we're talking about new employees. Existing employees would keep the same program and the same plan that they have, and we'll take care of that. But new employees coming in should be relegated to a 401k retirement plan, the same kind that you have in private industry, with even greater control that you have in private industry. So this old pension system has had it. It has no more usefulness in public life. We need to get rid of it and make certain that we have a defined contribution plan and not a defined benefit plan.
And do we have any rebuttals?
I want to use my last rebuttal.
Well, Rich Whitney,
Yeah, just
I'll let you know.
briefly, I heard Mr. White say that, well, pensioners need to be paying their premiums. That's exactly what they're doing. The state workers under the state workers' public pension plans, depending on the plan, are paying anywhere from 7 to 9% out of each paycheck into their premiums for their pensions. It's their pensions. A pension is a deferred wage. They are investing in their own future. And to say that now we can't have that, I'm a little flabbergasted that my colleagues on this panel seem to have so much faith in Wall Street as the best protector of their money. I don't. I think that it's much better to have a defined benefit pension system. The real trick is to find ways to ensure its stability and to extend it back to the private sector where we used to have it. I refuse to be part of the ongoing deterioration of living standards for the middle class in this country.
Thank you.
Question, can I add mine on to
Mr. Doc Walls, then Lex Green.
May I add mine on to my closing statement? May I add my 1 minute on to my closing
No,
statement?
you may not.
Okay.
Lex Green.
Yes, I just want to address that. I got sidetracked. But we definitely do have to remember that a defined benefit plan is something that you can continue to take out of regardless of how long you've been in the system. Our state police can retire at the age of 50 after 20 years and then collect for 30 years. Defined benefit sounds wonderful. Boy, I wish somebody would give me a defined benefit plan and I can just retire right now and live forever on somebody else's money. However, when you do the math, you can't do that. You have to steal from somebody else for 30, 40 years or more, and with the longevity we're seeing, our lives going on longer and longer, we need to be thinking about how do you add 2 + 2 and get a defined benefit plan. I don't think it's going to work. So we need to pay. Now, in terms of the Wall Street issue, every 401k I know of, you can get into money market, you can get into cash. You don't have to speculate with your money.
Thank you.
Here.
And Mr. White.
Well, we do not live in a utopian society. I know that may come as a shock to some. And the deterioration of the middle class is what is happening in this state right now. What business would come here? We've got 80 billion in pension liability, probably closer to 120. We've got another 15 billion in borrowed money and debt, another 6 billion in bills that we're not even paying. This has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that no company in its right mind would come here until we solve this problem. It has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with any of this stuff. The fact is, a company is not going to come here till the people of Illinois start to pay down this debt and get a feasible, a realistic pension plan. We will never solve these problems. We are not utopia. We are people and we make mistakes. And we will always be that. That is what makes us human and that's what makes us innovative. But the fact is, we will never change business in Illinois and bring families and businesses back here till we get rid of this money problem and start solving this problem.
Thank you. Mr. William Doc Walls.
One of the reasons it's so important to elect an independent is that you'll elect someone who can go in and make the drastic changes that are needed at this point in time in Illinois history. I know a lot of people don't want to hear drastic change, but that's what's in fact needed and is necessary. Pat Quinn has done a horrible job of managing our money. The bottom line is he's using debt to fund services. He's leaning on delegate agencies and corporations that do business with the state, not paying them, making them go out and borrow money that they can't afford to borrow. Education, we should have a 0% interest rate when it comes to loans on education at this level. Pat Quinn has no vision for Illinois. He doesn't understand how important it is to provide leadership. And leadership is the proclivity to instantly recognize a need or threat, immediately ascertain and evaluate all facts and circumstances, and develop, articulate, and disseminate a timely, effective, and efficient course of action. He's unable to do that, and he needs to be unseated now.
Thank you. Before we end the debate, I thought I'd throw in a little offer to the candidates. I would think that there might be a few audience members in the audience that would be interested in asking a question. And we do have one rebuttal left from Lex Green, Michael White, and 2 from Scott Cohen. I would be happy to put an extra rebuttal on for every single candidate, maybe have 1 or 2 questions from the audience of which each candidate would have 1 minute to answer to. Would you all agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, let's do that then. So, actually, is there anybody that would like to ask a question? Can't see.
That was the first
Well,
hand.
which
Yeah.
one?
She was the first
In the
hand.
back left?
He was second. Sorry. She was third.
All right, just a moment, man. I'm going to bring the mic to you. We need you actually for
We can't hear
recording.
I can't hear.
Please. I'll bring it to you. Here you go.
I wanted to ask, do I address it to one of the candidates or all of them? All of them, okay. Well, I'm very interested in the issue of the state bank and how that would help our financial situation here in Illinois. So, Rich, if you could start and, or I'm sorry, Mr. Whitney, start and describe that to us, and then maybe some of the other candidates could talk about it a little.
Can we ask her to repeat that one more time?
Yeah.
The actual question is, I'm very interested in how the Illinois State Bank would alleviate some of our financial woes in this state.
Thank you. Rich Whitney?
Yes, this is actually an old progressive idea. North Dakota has had its own state bank since 1919, and as a result, North Dakota is about one of only 3 states that is not in a major fiscal crisis right now. With a population of about 600,000, they actually have over a $1 billion surplus. And part of the reason it's a very common sense idea, when they collect their tax revenues, instead of going through the treasurer's office and then being invested in private banks where they make money off of it, they have their own bank where the state makes money off of it without any additional taxpayer expense. As a result of that, it not only helps keep them in the black, it also gives them a powerful monetary tool to supplement their social policies. So for example, when they have student loans, they have the lowest rates in the country. They can make loans to their farmers when they need them. I see tremendous potential with this idea. A state bank can borrow from the Federal Reserve at the same rate as commercial banks, about a 0.2% rate. And it gives them a lot of latitude for promoting the things that for the public policy of that state.
Thank you. Lex Green?
Yeah, I would like to say, Rich, you're right. We haven't come out publicly for the bank. However, this is an idea that I and my campaign team have been looking into as well. And by the way, there was an introduced bill in this last legislative session, the Community Bank Act. Unfortunately, it didn't go through. But I agree, North Dakota offers a good model, although they're more progressive than I would like to be. It does give the state the chance to make money off its own treasury. It also allows us to affect monetary policy. And right now, we have a monetary policy controlled by the Fed that is irresponsible, and we can actually interact, because we will be able to write our loans to the state. We will have an effect that will be beneficial to the state of Illinois and will affect the whole country.
Thank you. Michael White?
I actually don't know much about the system, but what I heard, it is intriguing to me because I think there's a lot of potential with the concept of a state bank. I think my only concern would again be, if you look at many government agencies, they're not very efficient because of how they're controlled. The U.S. Postal Service is a great one to start off with. They've asked to cut down to 5 days a week, and they still haven't got approval, and now they're raising the price of a stamp, even though they're not delivering the same amount of mail. This would be different, obviously, because it's in the state. It gives us more control, being closer to home, and I would be interested in learning more about it.
Thank you.
I love the concept, but here's the difficulty. In government, you spend first, and then you collect the revenue. So to fund a bank for Illinois, in Illinois revenue, you would always be a year behind, so you would still be borrowing from the same banks. There's never a way that you could get ahead of yourself. Right now, with $13 billion in debt, we'd have to have that $13 billion in the bank plus next year's $52 billion in the bank before we could become self-sufficient as a bank. So although it's a good idea, it's not feasible. You can't do that at this point in time.
Thank you. Scott Lee Cohen.
You know, I don't know enough about the issue to really comment, but I will say this. Anytime, and I go back to the lottery, anytime you just can't give the legislators and the state employees anything else that they can destroy. We have, you're laughing. The truth is, we have got to get rid of the mismanagement before we do anything like this. So, and again, until I know more about it, I'm not going to elaborate.
Would anyone like to rebuttal? Like screen?
I just want to respond to the idea that it's going to take more money to set up the bank. If the bank is part of the Federal Reserve, and we're going to get into some concepts here that you're welcome to check with me or Rich or any of us who are familiar with this, but if you're part of the Federal Reserve System, you're actually involved in the creation of money and credit. That's what the Federal Reserve does, and it does it through member banks. So if we have a bank, we will be involved in the actual process of money creation. Of course, we would want to make sure we have stringent regulations that control it so that it doesn't get out of hand. But in that regard, we can fund the bank, and it will be beneficial to us. One of the things, by the way, the Bank of North Dakota does very well is they use their treasury to help fund student loans. It's one of the best parts of their program down there. So there's a lot of benefits that come from this, and yes, it is something we can do easily.
Any additional rebuttals, expansion, question? Okay, our time is 8:40. We have time for one more audience question for the evening. And I'm gonna go with somebody that actually has taken a big lead on helping out here.
Good evening, candidates. My name is Raymond Morris Jr., student body president here at Chicago State University. And the question I have for you today is, with the increase in crime in Illinois, what are your plans for the future to halt gun violence in the state of Illinois? Thank you.
Could you repeat that? Yeah.
With the increase in crime in Illinois, what are your plans for the future to halt gun violence in the state of Illinois?
Select screen.
Did you say gun violence or just violence? Gun violence.
Gun violence.
Okay. We have a difference of opinion with Mayor Daley and some of the people entrenched in the state, thinking that by disarming law-abiding citizens that we will decrease crime, and in fact we have just the opposite. As long as people are unarmed, they will be the targets of those people who don't care about the law. So the recent McDonald decision was very important, and I would like to make sure that we implement the inherent right to own guns to everybody who wants to, so they can defend themselves. I have very little time to go into other things, but I also think that inner city violence, a lot of that is almost 200 murders this year in Chicago. Many of them are related to the drug trade and gang violence, and we need to end prohibition of marijuana and get rid of the gang violence, and that will drastically reduce the number of murders.
Thank you. Michael White.
How do you know it's spring in Illinois? Because people start getting shot in Chicago. That's how I know it. Every year this happens, and every year we talk like it's a new problem. The question is, what is anybody doing in the fall, in the winter, to resolve this issue? I don't ever hear any programs going on. And I'm not saying that I have the answers here today, but I know there's a solution. It isn't getting rid of guns. As believing in the Constitution, you have the right to keep and bear arms, and that's all there is to it. And the reason I have to support that is because we have to support our Constitution in its entirety. We can't pick and choose from it. But if we're going to start solving this problem, it's deeper rooted than just having guns. In the last weekend, I think it was at the one Chicago Fest, I think there was 3 stabbings. No guns involved. Luckily, nobody died. But the fact is, people have become very violent. And if we don't change how we are as a society, it's just in generally how we treat each other, how we treat life. And we need to start speaking of this. And again, it comes back to, as a governor, to be able to talk about the joy of life and joy of living in changing people's lives.
Thank you. William Doc Walls.
2 prongs to this. The first thing that you have to do is create jobs. When people are employed, they act differently. We need jobs in our communities that will stop the high level of violence and maintain it. Got to have jobs. The next thing is we have to stop the flow of illegal guns and drugs into our community. Not legal guns, but illegal guns and drugs into our community. An idea was floated around recently to have the National Guard come in and take over the black community. I didn't favor that at all. What I favor is use of the National Guard in remote places to control our roads, our waterways, our airports, our highways, seaports, so that they can begin to stop the flow of illegal guns and drugs all across the state of Illinois, which generally funnels into Illinois. I don't want the National Guard on street corners in the black community with their finger on the trigger of automatic weapons or driving tanks down the street. We don't want that. We don't want curfews. We don't want them stopping, but we do want them to stop the flow of illegal guns and drugs.
Thank you. Scott Lee Cohen.
Now, I agree with Doc Walls. Studies have shown when people are working and they have a sense of pride and dignity, crime goes down. When people are unemployed, they're in the streets causing trouble. We put our people back to work, I believe that crime will go down. And again, I have to agree with Doc Walls. The concentration needs to be on the illegal guns. You know, right now, Cook County is focusing on guns in general. And you can get all the legal guns off the street, and there's still going to be illegal guns. This is where the focus needs to be and the money needs to be spent.
Richard Whitney.
Yes, I believe in the Second Amendment, and that includes the right to carry firearms, provided that there's common sense regulations coupled with it. It has to be at a high threshold, and you have to allow local counties, if they choose after deliberation, to opt out of that. I think this is a case where you need to respect the will of the people at the local government level, the county level. But I also agree that no matter what we do with gun policy, that is not the most important factor for addressing the problem of gun violence. The roots are social. Doc Walls is absolutely correct. It starts with economic opportunities. You need to have that foundation. But it's not just that. It's also the secondary effects of long-term unemployment and unaddressed poverty and lack of educational opportunities. It means dealing with things like domestic violence and violence in the home and privation in the home, teaching people to be better parents. There is a huge, huge correlation, cause and effect relationship between child abuse when people are young and later violent criminal activity. We need to address that and stop that at its roots.
Thank you. So on that note, would anybody like to expand, rebuttal, or shall we move on to closing statements? Closing statements? Great. Closing statements will be 2 minutes each, and we can start with Mr. Michael White.
Oh, happy day. Well, thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate all the candidates' input, because the reality is, for me, I think what the state of Illinois needs is a leader, not only in the governor's office, but we need leaders in our legislature. And I know there's an independent running out there, so please introduce yourself to him. And for me, what is it that is a leader, I think, is what is important. The fact is that I don't have all the ideas. And if you're the candidate up here today that thinks you have all the ideas, you're not the type of person I want in office. Because a leader is a person who gathers the pieces from all those around them, from the people of Illinois, and is listening, and tries to put those pieces of the puzzle together to create a better state. If I say I'm talking about a sales tax being good at this time, that may very well be what I think is good, but it doesn't mean there aren't other options. Just like the state bank option, I think it's very intriguing and very interesting. But none of the individuals up here have all the answers, and we need a leader who's going to go in there and seek out and search answers and to start solving problems instead of creating more problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
This
William
has been,
Duckwalls?
this has been an interesting political season. The one thing that we saw from the primary elections is that there's voter apathy more than ever before. And that voter apathy exists because we lack leadership here in Illinois. We have a lot of selfish people sitting in positions of power who are using their offices for all of the wrong reasons. We have to get involved, though. We can't simply say, I'm good, because you're not. You can make a difference. People have to recognize that their one vote matters, their one vote counts, and their voice should ring loudly right now more than ever before. Otherwise, you're leaving a legacy of failure to your children and your children's children. Now is the time to get involved. Although things are tough and times are hard and the economy is upside down, we still have the potential and the possibility to do great things right here in Illinois. Illinois is ideally situated. We're right in the middle of the heartland. We're close to every other major city, a stone's throw away. But we have to start looking to our future. We have to ask ourselves, what is the newest technology? And the answer is nanotechnology. You don't hear Pat Quinn or Mike Madigan or Brady talking about nanotechnology and making certain that Illinois is the hub, the center of nanotechnology development. We got passed by Silicon Valley when we shouldn't have. There's no reason in the world with the institutions that we have here, like the University of Chicago and Northwestern and the institution at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale and University of Illinois, that we shouldn't be the center of all activity when it comes to thought and development. This institution right here, Chicago State University, one of the historically black universities, has minds that are untapped and have great potential. We need to look to Illinoisans for leadership and stop looking to those persons who proclaim themselves to be leaders.
Thank you. Scott Lee Cohen.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and I want to thank the other candidates for coming. Of course, Pat Quinn and Brady aren't here. I think that there's a strong sense of arrogance and entitlement with the Democrats and Republicans in this state. My belief is that the only one who is entitled is you. You're entitled to fair and honest representation by your leaders, not this nonsense that's been going on for decades. The fact of the matter is, I'm a political outsider. I am a successful small businessman. I chose to run in the primary because I believe in this state and I have a genuine care for the people in this state. I believe that I have the sophistication that's going to be required to bring the businesses back to Illinois. I know I have the experience in balancing a budget, cutting the waste, cutting the corruption. You know, I stand before you tonight and I said, I don't know everything. But I know that I'm smart enough to ask the right people when I don't know. It's going to take that kind of collaboration with the people and the communities and the legislators to get us out of this financial predicament that we're in. I appreciate your listening to me, and I appreciate you inviting me here tonight. I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich Whitney.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the conventional wisdom we keep hearing from the corporate media is that we have anti-incumbent fever this election season, and that the pendulum is going to swing the other way from Democrat to Republican. This, we are told, is because Americans like things in the center. Center of what, they never really explain. But I believe that you and I are tired of this nonsense and that Illinois voters are smarter than that. I believe that Illinois voters have woken up to the fact that when the pendulum just swings back and forth, you never move forward, and the general direction you're pointing is down. What passes for representative democracy in this country today is little more than an elaborate puppet show between fake left, fake pro-labor Democrats who only pretend to support working people and the poor, and fake conservative Republicans who don't believe in conserving a damn thing that I can identify and are every bit as fiscally irresponsible as their Democratic brethren. No matter who wins the elections this way, the real puppet masters, the corporations and the banking elite, always win, and the majority, the working people, the small business owners, the farmers and the dispossessed, always lose. But we do not have to continue this way. We can change this by fighting for ourselves, for real representation. We, the working people, the disenfranchised, are the majority. Our organizations in labor, the peace movement, the environmental movement, the movements for tax and budget reform, for real school reform and healthcare reform, we are the majority. We have the public policy solutions. The single barrier to real social progress are these two institutions, the two corporate-sponsored parties known as the Democrats and Republicans. In my campaign and in the Green Party, we the people finally have a vehicle for breaking down this barrier, a party based on principle, a party that does not accept corporate campaign contributions. Please support this campaign. Please go to whitneyforgov.org and get involved. And please support and cast your vote for me, Rich Whitney, on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Lex Green.
Thank you, and thanks for putting this on, Christina, and everybody that sponsored this. When you walk away tonight, whether you agree with me or disagree with me on the role of government, I hope that you ask the questions. Don't just accept what the politicians and the media tell you is the role of government. Think about it. How much government do you want in your life? I also want you to question who gets to define compassion. In our state, compassion is defined by politicians who are promising you something in order to get your vote. It's all about re-election. So it's real easy if somebody promises me money or subsidy to say that's the guy I want. But you have to ask, where does that money come from? Who pays for your subsidy? Right now, we owe somewhere in the neighborhood of $130 billion by the time you add the $80 billion pensions, the bonds, and our spending obligations. Our bonds right now won't get paid off till the year 2040. That's 30 years from now. Your children and your grandchildren are going to pay for the subsidies the state gave you last year. Is that compassion? I don't think so. It's time we rethink the way government operates. Let's free up our children so they can live free and they can use their money for their lives. And that's what I hope you think about when you go home. Please check out my website, electlex.com.
Thank you. And I'd like to end, first I want to thank again our sponsors for this debate very much. And I genuinely want to thank all of you out here today, out listening right now in this live feed, for caring, for truly being a partaking in a debate that's truly all-inclusive and a true debate in itself. I would also like to take the time as an audience to really stand up and thank the candidates for coming out here and fighting and representing true electoral reform for free and equal elections. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you all.
And to end on that note, you can be rest assured this debate tonight, you can see it at freeandequal.org, also at Chicago State University, that's csu.org, and you can be rest assured that free and equal elections will continue to put on debates not only in Illinois again, but nationwide. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. Please check out the candidates' brochures, information, learn more about all of the parties, take it all in, and go to their websites. And thanks again for coming out tonight. Appreciate it.